Imagine walking into an office, full of confidence, only to completely misjudge who you're dealing with. That's exactly what happens in today's story. A woman, certain of her superiority, storms into a business meeting and immediately dismisses the black man sitting across from her, assuming he's just an assistant. But little does she know, the very man she's belittling is the CEO of the company she's desperate to impress. As the tension in the room builds, her arrogance only grows, leading to a series of shocking twists that leave everyone stunned. What happens next will not only challenge her assumptions, but leave her questioning everything. Stick around to see how this uncomfortable encounter takes a turn no one could have expected, and how one man's grace and power change the entire narrative. As the woman sits down, her tone remains sharp and dismissive. She doesn't even bother making eye contact with the man she assumes is beneath her. Instead, she brushes past him, directing her attention to the secretary, demanding to know when the person in charge will arrive. The room grows quiet, an awkward tension settling over everyone. The man, calm and composed, simply watches her, his expression unreadable. He doesn't interrupt, doesn't correct her. Instead, he gestures for her to continue, his silence only adding to the unease. The woman, oblivious to the awkward glances from others in the room, begins to outline her proposal, speaking in a tone dripping with condescension. She boasts about her company's cutting-edge solutions and implies they would be doing his company a favor. Little does she know, the man she's ignoring holds the power to make or break her career, and he's about to prove it. The woman's presentation drags on, each word laced with arrogance. She talks down to everyone in the room, barely pausing to acknowledge the polite nods or expressions of discomfort around her. She's so focused on trying to impress that she doesn't notice the quiet exchanges of glances between the other attendees or the subtle smirk on the man's face as he listens. Midway through her pitch, she pauses dramatically and turns to him. "I assume you'll relay all of this to your boss," she says, with a tone so dismissive it makes the air in the room feel heavier. A few people shift uncomfortably in their chairs, but no one speaks up. The man raises an eyebrow, leaning back in his seat. "What makes you think I'm not the boss?" he asks calmly. The woman's confident expression falters for a moment, but she quickly recovers, brushing off his words with a forced laugh. "Let's not waste time," she snaps. But the room knows her world is already starting to crack. The woman straightens her posture, clearly rattled by his response, but determined not to lose control. "Well, if you were the boss," she says with a strained smile, "you'd know this is the opportunity of a lifetime for your company. My team has worked with some of the biggest names in the industry, and frankly, you'd be lucky to have us." Her voice grows sharper as she tries to regain her footing, but the man doesn't flinch. Instead, he leans forward, his calm gaze never leaving hers. The silence is deafening as everyone waits for his next move. Finally, he picks up a file from the table, glancing through it before speaking. "You mentioned working with the biggest names," he says, his tone steady but with an edge of authority. "Funny, I don't see them listed here. In fact, I see some interesting discrepancies in your record." The woman's face goes pale. "What are you talking about?" she snaps, her confidence unraveling. The man simply slides the file across the table. "You might want to take a closer look," he says. The room feels like it's holding its breath as the woman hesitates, dread flickering across her face. Something tells her she's just stepped into a situation far beyond her control. The woman hesitates, her hand hovering over the file. The confident persona she wore so boldly now seems fragile, cracking under the weight of the moment. Finally, she flips it open, her eyes scanning the pages. Her expression shifts from confusion to shock, then to barely concealed panic. This can't be right," she stammers, looking up at the man. "Where did you get this information?" The man sits back in his chair, his calm demeanor unshaken. "It's all public record," he replies. "You'd be surprised what you can uncover with a little research." His words are measured, deliberate, and it's interesting how some of the biggest names you claim to work with have no record of any partnership with your company. The room is dead silent as the weight of his words settles in, but then he drops the real bombshell. And as one more thing, he says, sliding a second document across the table. It seems your company is under investigation for fraudulent claims. Care to explain that? The woman's face flushes deep red as she stares at the document. Her hands tremble slightly as she tries to muster a response, but nothing comes out. The man's calm gaze never wavers. You came into this room assuming you could talk down to me, he continues, his voice firm but controlled. Maybe it's time you reevaluate who you think you're dealing with. The tension is suffocating now, the air heavy with the weight of her unraveling confidence. The woman knows she's cornered, but the worst is yet to come. The woman sits frozen, her mind racing for an explanation, but nothing comes. She knows the weight of the evidence in front of her. This is a misunderstanding, she finally blurts out, her voice shaky. There's been a mix-up. I can clear all this up. Before she can finish, the man raises a hand, silencing her. His tone shifts, growing sharper. Enough, he says. You walked in here with an attitude, assuming you knew who I was. You didn't care to ask. You didn't care to listen. And now you're realizing that arrogance doesn't get you very far when the truth comes out. The woman's eyes dart around the room, searching for support, but no one speaks. Everyone's attention is fixed on the man. He leans forward, his voice calm but commanding. For your information, I built this company from the ground up. I've faced people like you my entire career, people who think they can judge me before knowing anything about me. And guess what? They never win. The woman's mouth opens, but no words come out. The silence is broken by a knock on the door. A young assistant walks in, handing the man another file. He opens it and glances through before sliding it back toward her. Before you leave, you might want to know this, he says. Your company's contract. It was never going to happen, not after the way you conducted yourself today. The final blow lands, and the woman's face crumbles. She gathers her things, muttering something incoherent, and rushes out of the room, her confidence shattered. As the door closes behind her, the man looks around at the stunned faces in the room. Let this be a lesson, he says, standing tall. Respect matters. Always. And with that, he calmly returns to his seat, ready to continue the meeting. As the room settled, the man took a deep breath and smiled faintly. The tension that had filled the space moments ago was now replaced with a sense of quiet respect. The remaining attendees exchanged glances, processing what had just unfolded. The man's composure, his ability to stand firm yet dignified, had left a lasting impression on everyone present. He turned his attention back to the agenda, effortlessly guiding the conversation forward. There was no need to dwell on the incident. He had made his point, and the lesson was clear. Respect and humility mattered, no matter who you were or where you came from. Later, as the meeting wrapped up, one of his colleagues approached him. You handled that with such grace, they said. He simply shrugged. Sometimes, people need to be reminded that actions speak louder than assumptions. And with that, he walked out, ready for whatever came next.